Street Fighter 2, the sensational video game that swept the 90s and to this day remains one of the best-selling fighting games of all time, with millions of copies sold in the initial release and countless remakes, collections, and re-releases over the years due to the game's immense popularity. This franchise has so many iconic stages that are instantly recognizable to fans, from Ryu's castle to Chun-Li's shopping district stage, Guile's Air Force Base, and E Honda's bathhouse, just to name a few. There's no way that I can make a deep dive stage series without at least mentioning one from a Street Fighter game. And while I definitely want to do a dive into Ryu's stage, which is perhaps the most famous of all the ones I mentioned, there are so many different iterations of Ryu's castle stage that it would be like a 2-hour video to go through all of them. Though maybe incoming in the future. But I wanted to start off with something a little bit easier first. So, let's take a deep dive into a different iconic stage from Street Fighter, Cammy stage, or as it's sometimes called, English Manor. As many fans of the series may know, Cammy was not in the original release of Street Fighter 2 and was added in Super Street Fighter 2: The New Challengers. Her debut stage was added alongside her first appearance in the game. And while certain elements have changed in the stage over its various iterations, to me, this version is the definitive Cammy stage. The stage supposedly takes place in England, which is where Cammy is from.
And remember that because we'll get back to this later.
As you enter the stage, the player is instantly drawn in by the dynamic flickering of the northern lights. I love the gorgeous rainbow hues of the sky and the twinkling stars in this stage, which I think really elevates it to the next level. As we continue to look in the background, we can see that players are standing in an area surrounded by mountains with a small lake in the middle. The animation here is really well done, and I really like the reflection of the northern lights on the water. To stage left, we can see a small town with faint flickering lights, and some sort of estate or maybe castle more towards the right side. Moving on to the foreground, we can see that the characters are battling on top of a small bridge connecting two sides of a castle together. There are also crows, or maybe ravens, I can't really tell, sitting on either side of the bridge, which fly away when the round is over. And on the castle itself, we can see flags hung up on these walls, which, based on what I could Google, most closely resembles the current-day Wessex flag, often considered to be England's first national flag. Though they could also be Pegasi, which would be more in line with what we see in later versions of this stage. Next to the flags are statues of praying angels and lights coming in from windows of the castle, likely illuminated by candles, since we can see lit candles inside the castle to the right. This specific version of the stage in the New Challengers is virtually the same as Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, with the only exception being the northern lights and its reflection on the lake moving faster due to the game's increased speed. Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo's introduction also features a close-up of the stage, featuring Chun-Li and a playful Cammy sticking out her tongue. The original musical composition for the stage was done by Shun Nishigaki. Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and the New Challengers both play Cammy's theme, but the New Challengers' melody is more clear and defined over the background accompaniment and has more of a reverb effect. Or at least that's what it sounds like according to my very untrained ears. In addition, in both games, the music speeds up when time is about to run out or the opponent is on their final round and a character's health is low. On a somewhat tangential note, the New Challengers version of Cammy's theme also appears in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. In the game, there are two Cammy songs called Cammy Stage Type A and Cammy Stage Type B. And based on what I could hear, though I don't know for sure, Type A sounds like Cammy's theme from Hyper Street Fighter 2, the Anniversary Edition. And Type B sounds like the New Challengers version. However, in the game after Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix, Capcom decided to go in an entirely different direction with many of their character themes. This game had a soundtrack made by fans from a website called OC Remixes, which actually still exists as of me making this video. In the company's own words from their website, while video game companies have worked with fans in the past, HD Remix is the first major video game with a completely fan-made soundtrack. More than 20 gamers from around the world contributed remixes of the original Street Fighter game's music for inclusion in the updated game, in styles including jazz, hip-hop, reggaeton, spaghetti western, garage rock, big beat, and electronica. I really think the soundtrack is quite excellent, and I really like how it takes inspiration from a variety of different musical styles. In the HD Remix album, Cammy's theme, called Army Girl, was composed by Malkos and Red-Tailed Fox. According to the Game Theorist Wiki, Malkos is a British musical artist, and he actually has a YouTube channel where he's still releasing music that I listen to. He's done remix music for games such as Donkey Kong Country 3, Shonen Jump, and others. Red-Tailed Fox has also done music for various remixes of songs from Final Fantasy VII and the Tales of series. This version of Cammy's theme is definitely the most experimental, and overall the melody sounds very smooth and electronic. The song also adds in an entirely new section to the melody, expanding on the original track, and I definitely appreciated the change in pace after hearing Cammy's theme so many times while editing this video. Let's discuss the real-life inspiration behind this castle. So, in previous videos in this series, I typically do a dive into the location behind the stage I'm talking about, and most of the time, this is fairly straightforward. Like in my Capcom vs SNK 2 video, I talked about the Mori Nobuta Matsuri stage and the customs of the region and the festival, and it was a good time. However, this video was totally different from the beginning. For one thing, when I started researching this video, I found so many different opinions on the Street Fighter Wiki and other sources like official fanbooks on where this castle was located and what it was modeled after. So I want to warn you that everything I'm about to say here should be taken with a grain of salt because I could not get a clear-cut answer anywhere. So in my quest to understand the inspiration behind Cammy's stage, I first turned to looking for primary sources. And after poring through English translations of various books, I eventually found what I thought looked promising. In the Eiga Street Fighter 2 Memorial Koshiki fanbook, it stated that Cammy's stage takes place in Fraserburg Castle. So Fraserburg Castle seems straightforward enough. So I typed Fraserburg Castle into good old Google, and then this showed up on my screen. Weirdly enough, I wasn't getting any hits for Fraserburg Castle, but rather for a place called Kinnard Castle. After reading the Wikipedia page, I learned that Fraserburg Castle was changed to Kinnard Head Castle Lighthouse in 1787. So it was at this point that I really should have suspected that something was a bit off, but I totally did not. So I began writing this whole section of the video on the history of this castle, how it was turned into a lighthouse, and then eventually a museum, and how there was a wine storage area that was supposedly haunted. It was a whole thing. But as I was putting the final touches on my original script, a sudden realization hit me. I was writing about a castle on the coast that was turned into a lighthouse hundreds of years ago, which definitely was not a house surrounded by forests and a lake. I searched for Fraserburg Castle again to see maybe if I was talking about the wrong castle, but nothing was really coming back in the search results. Google kept leading me back to Kinnard Head Castle. So then I thought, okay, maybe there is a town called Fraserburgh and there is a castle there that is what they're referring to. So then I looked in the town of Fraserburgh, which was in the same location as this Kinnaird Castle, and no dice. So I sat there for a while, scratched my head, wondering what the heck was going on. But then I got the bright idea that maybe I'm actually looking for a different place called Kinnaird Castle. And sure enough, with a quick Google search, I learned that there are actually 3 Kinnaird Castles in the UK. It wasn't quite Kinnaird Head Castle, but close enough. There was Kinnaird Head Castle and Lighthouse in Fraserburgh, a town on the coast of northeastern Scotland, which we just discussed. There was also a Kinnaird Castle in Gowrie, Scotland, and one in Brechin, Scotland. So I figured that one of these must be it. Just a case of mistaken names. So then I clicked into different links. I went and looked at their Wikipedia pages because I am a grade A researcher, and none of these castles looked quite right. I looked between photos of the Kinnaird Head Castle with the lighthouse, the one in Gowrie, and the one in Brechin. The castle with the lighthouse was long destroyed, and it was also by the ocean, which made it an unlikely choice for the source material. And on the other hand, the one in Gowrie didn't really look big enough. It really seemed like a much smaller castle or maybe estate. The one on Brechin, on the other hand, has actually been turned into a hotel, and it looked the most promising, though the cone-shaped towers and the arched windows didn't really fit in with what I was seeing on the stage either. And oh yeah, there was one little detail that I had also forgotten. All of these castles were in Scotland, not England. So, in other news, back to square one. And so, in my utter desperation, like the fantastic researcher I am, I then turned to the Street Fighter Wikipedia for answers. Maybe, just maybe, they would have something more definitive. So I scrolled through the list of Street Fighter 2 stages, and I didn't see Cammy's stage. So then I went into the stages section that had all of the Street Fighter games in it. And then I saw the stage English Manor, which is the Street Fighter 5 version of Cammy's stage. So I clicked the link, I scrolled down the page, and hoped that finally this Wikipedia page would have something that would bring clarity to this situation. And there it was, all the way at the bottom. The castle in the middle of the stage, not the stage that is being fought on, is Fraserburgh Castle. So, in other words, the building in the middle of the stage could be Fraserburgh Castle. So, not the stage that was being fought on. So, which one of the 3 Kinnaird castles was the one in the middle? And what was the actual castle being fought on? Was it even Kinnaird Castle or was it Fraserburgh Castle? Because they said Fraserburgh Castle, but there was no other Fraserburgh castles. And so I continued reading the next line. The rural backdrop, complete with mountains, a lake, and small villages, is very similar to Derwentwater in Cumbria. Derwentwater in Cumbria is in England, not in Scotland. And all the castles I've been looking at have been in Scotland. Is the stage in England, Scotland, or Wales? Or maybe even Germany, because multiple sources told me that the castle you fight on is based on Liechtenstein Castle in the Swabian Alps, Germany. And when I looked into this, you can clearly see that there are bridges in this castle, just like the bridges you fight on in game. So, at the point of me recording this video, I still have no official answers. The closest conclusion that I can draw is that this stage is some unholy mash between different countries in Europe, and that the stage is vaguely Western European, with the castle itself in the Gothic Revival architectural style. And I will leave it at that for the sake of my sanity. Given that Street Fighter has a long history of having legally distinct versions of real places, the fact that they seem to have taken inspiration from so many different places was a real surprise and treat to me. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get back to the stages. After Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix, Ultra Street Fighter 2 The Final Challengers was released in 2017, and as of me recording this video, this is the most recent version of Street Fighter 2. The graphics of this game were not updated from Turbo HD Remix, and both games' sprites and backgrounds were created by Udon Entertainment, who does the artwork for the official Street Fighter comics. Overall, the stage's proportions seem much larger and more in the foreground. The graphics are smoother and rendered in a way that reminds me of almost like a painting versus the more pixelated style from before. The stage itself, particularly the castle and the bridge, has more of a cool tone versus the warmer tones of the previous games. The castle in the middle of the stage, the lake, and the castle you're standing on have all moved closer to the foreground, while the town and its flickering lights have been pushed more into the background and is only visible when you move to the right side of the stage. The flags on the upper floor of the castle are similarly hard to see, and you really have to jump to actually catch a glimpse of it. In addition, the northern lights are higher up on the screen than before and are slightly obscured by the player's health bars. There are also some other smaller details that are different. So the candles that were on the right side of the stage are missing, and the crests on the flags are now some sort of pattern versus the animal figure from before. The wooden peg in the ground on the right side is also missing, and the little crows or birds or ravens from before have way less animations than before. Now they have only 2, though they still fly away at the end of the round. Overall, I would say that this is not my favorite version of Cammy's stage. It's still very solid, but I just prefer the previous versions for the brighter colors and animations. For example, the water in the lake is no longer animated and seems flatter, and maybe this is just a me thing, but the previous version of the Northern Lights seems more organic, whereas the extreme waviness of the lights in this version just isn't as appealing to me. In Street Fighter V, English Manor is purchasable as a DLC stage for $3.99 USD or 70,000 fight money, the in-game currency. This stage is a return to the warmer graphical tones from before and is the best 3D version of the stage that I could have hoped for, though my favorite version is still the original Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo stage. As a side note, in Street Fighter V, we also learned that the stage takes place on a clear night at 12 AM, and the temperature is 66 degrees Fahrenheit. A fun detail also included in this game is Dan's summary, which he gives for each DLC stage, costume, and character. For the stage English Manor, he states, "This is the England stage where Cammy made her first debut in Super Street Fighter 2. I hear it's pretty rare to be able to see the Aurora from England." Amazing input, Dan. In terms of changes to the stage itself, besides being rendered in 3D instead of 2D, the lake in the center of the stage is now a river that flows directly under the bridge your fighters are standing on, which you can particularly see in certain supers. The lights in the distance seem to be much smaller, and the buildings seem to be more of a small village versus a town. The northern lights also move more organically, with clouds peppering the sky and tons of beautiful stars. On the castle itself, we still have our angel statues, which are kneeling now instead of standing, or maybe they were always kneeling, it's also kind of hard to tell. In addition, the flags on the castle are more distinct, and you can see that they're clearly supposed to be Pegasi. The birds are still standing on the bridge, but are more animated, actively pecking the ground and flapping their wings when a character is knocked to the ground. There's also a new third bird in the center of the stage, and my favorite detail is just how chunky they all look now. These birds are so freaking cute. In addition, The side of the castle also has some flowers, which have replaced the tall grass from before. During certain supers, you can see a door with an iron gate half open on the left side, as well as light coming from the inside of the castle to the right, which opens up into a hallway that leads to nowhere. The music is, you guessed it, another remix version of Cammy's theme, but this particular version is very good. They've added this really interesting ramp-up introduction to the song with electric guitar that I like, and the accompanying guitar and piano riff adds a layer of complexity that I really find myself bopping my head to. The music from the previous versions, excluding the HD remix, were still very good, but a lot more straightforward in the melody and accompaniment. However, because there are so many different remixes of this theme that are so very similar to this one, sometimes all of them just blur together in my mind. Cammy's stage is my personal favorite Street Fighter II stage, and overall, she's just one of my favorite characters from the series. I love the energy and design of her stage because it just has that iconic Capcom vibe that's kind of hard to explain. Maybe it's the colors, the energy, or the music, but once it all comes together, it's truly a place that I could get lost in and wish I could explore. With all of the excitement around the recent announcement of Street Fighter VI, I would be so excited to see a glimpse of the next iteration of this stage. However, as of me writing this video, I haven't seen any indication that English Manor will return, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Other character stages, such as Guile and Dalsum's, have gotten a huge and much needed makeover in the upcoming game, and I would really love to see the same thing for English Manor. Even though it was an unexpectedly huge undertaking to do all of the research for this video, I still really enjoyed making it. I just hope that the next one is a little less complicated. But anyways, thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, rate, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one.